So we're back, and today we're going to be talking about our fertility journey and how we came to have our son.
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people that have their own fertility stories and journeys can agree that it's a lot.
Long process, expensive process.
Emotionally draining, physically draining,
But-
financially draining.
But all worth it.
Yes, very much worth it. So yeah, you want to start off?
Yeah, we'll be discussing our fertility journey as a lesbian couple.
Yeah.
February of 2022. We chose a fertility clinic that was in our area, had good reviews. We actually knew someone who had also gone to this place, and they had great things to say.
A same-sex couple.
Yeah, and so we chose the clinic, and our first step was just calling the clinic and saying, "Hey, we want to meet with the doctor to discuss fertility options."
How to start.
Yeah, discuss our goals as a family, how many kids we want, who's going to carry, all that good stuff. So that was the very first step. And we did a telemed visit or telehealth visit. And it was just pretty much saying okay, we'd ideally like 2 kids. At the time, we wanted to do something called reciprocal IVF, which is where we retrieve both of our eggs, fertilize them, and form embryos from both of our eggs. And then I would carry her embryo that's genetically linked to her. She would carry my embryo.
That's the best case scenario.
Yeah, and so that was what we ideally wanted to do, but we did ask about success rates with at-home insemination and IUI and traditional IVF, just to kind of know
Options.
the cost of each, how likely it was to take with each, and just weigh our options.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we decided on IVF.
Because we wanted to do reciprocal IVF.
Yes, and we liked the idea that we could genetically test embryos. And we
Yes.
often get the question on why we wanted to genetically test our embryos, and it was pretty much just because Whitney was 35 at the time, so technically a geriatric pregnancy if she were to get pregnant. And so her eggs were at higher risk of being abnormal. And we just wanted to limit the risk of miscarriages or just the embryos not being genetically healthy and it ending in miscarriage or something along those lines.
And it was just extra security.
Yeah.
Mentally.
And we just felt
we had that as an option, so
yeah.
we utilized that.
Yeah.
To our benefit. Yeah.
Well, and
To our benefit.
if you're doing IVF, you're paying $25,000 to have a child. The thought of doing all of this, paying $25,000, implanting an embryo, and then it being an abnormal embryo that ends in a miscarriage was just a heartbreaking thought. So we wanted to omit that risk as much as we could.
Yeah. And that's just our stance on it. So
yeah.
It doesn't mean that, you
No, yeah, you do
we're-
whatever works for you. But
Yeah.
that was just why we chose to go that route.
Yeah.
So
We're very risk averse people, so that was a way
Yes.
to eliminate or reduce risk as much as possible. So
yeah, so that was pretty much the safest option for us, is what our doctor was saying.
Yeah.
So after,
And sorry to say, but in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's expensive to do genetic testing, but you're kind of already putting forward a lot of money. What's another few $1,000s to, reduce that risk? So
yeah, which sounds insane to say, but
Yeah.
it's when you're going through it and it's so expensive, it's at this
put it
point,
on my tab.
Yeah.
Just put it on my tab.
So yeah, after that first initial consultation, our clinic, I don't think all clinics require this, but maybe our clinic required that we have an evaluation with a psychiatrist, just to make sure we were okay using a sperm donor. And
they went over, how even the basics of, not even basics, but just when your child gets to a certain age, how do you feel like you're going to introduce this topic of sperm donor? And they just wanted to make sure that we had plenty of resources and support.
and that we felt prepared,
Yeah.
to some degree.
Which was kind of nice and cool. It was just
Yeah.
one meeting. It wasn't
Yeah.
constant meetings with them. But
And they do require that for all of their patients, not
Yes.
just same-sex couples.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had that meeting, and then after that, we just got basic labs and ultrasounds. Since we were both going through egg retrieval, we did
At
it
the
all
same time,
together.
yeah.
We did it all together. Ultrasound was just looking for like that the uterus looked okay, ovaries looked healthy. Labs were just basic labs looking at hormone levels, things like that.
Yeah.
Just making sure that we were ready to go through egg retrieval.
Yeah.
And during this time, we also started our search for our sperm donor.
Ooh, that was really, I wouldn't say stressful, but it's the best word I can use to describe it because there's a lot that weighs on that.
It's a huge decision.
Yes.
And
how do you decide? Like, you know,
Yeah.
you feel really superficial at first, and then when you dig deeper into each sperm donor, it's like, I'm still going to be a little superficial, but how we discussed it and how we came to decide on who's a good match, who's not, or how do we, you know, narrow it down. I like how you came up with it. You said, is this a person that we think we would hang out with, you know, in real life?
that we would like in real life,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes. And that was a way to look at it, and it helped us a lot.
So yeah, we did finally find a donor. The stars aligned. We found one. There was enough of the vials that we could purchase. And so that kind of coincided with the time of just doing our like basic labs and ultrasounds, making sure we were ready for
Right.
IVF. All of our labs pretty much came back normal. I think both of our AMH, which is the lab that says kind of how, I don't say good you are, but how like your egg production is. Both of ours were like on the lower end of normal, which wasn't abnormal for her because she was 35, so he kind of anticipated that. At the time, I was 27.
7?
And mine was a little bit lower than
What he had
like
thought
what would have been for my age, but ended up being fine. So then after that, our next step was actually going through stimulation, leading up to our egg retrieval, which is like 5 medications a day, ultrasounds every day for like 10 days, leading up to a procedure where you're sedated and they retrieve all of the eggs. And
It's a big commitment.
like we said, we went through this together though. So I do my own injections, but I gave Whitney hers.
It's insane to me, but good for her. I could not do it.
And we had to drive to our clinic an hour away almost every day to get updated ultrasounds.
While working.
Yeah. Because they are monitoring like how many eggs are being produced in response to these stimulation medications.
In the size.
In
So
the
they're
size,
seeing
yeah.
the growth, you know, production. Yeah.
And the hope is that like you'll have more eggs and larger eggs that look like, so you'll have more that they can retrieve.
Yeah.
Now, from the ultrasounds, they can't really tell you if they're going to be good quality, if they're going to be viable, nothing like that. But leading up, our ultrasounds were showing that like we would have a lower number of eggs. I think they were predicting like 8 or something for you, and maybe 10 for me, which is kind of on the low-ish side of things.
But again, for me, that was expected.
Yeah. Procedure, super easy, super quick. It was maybe 15 minutes. Ours were back to back. Literally, we did them, went in together. I obviously hadn't gone, she went in first. So she went in, got her procedure, came out, and was sedated. And then she got 13 eggs.
Yeah.
And then it was my turn. And then I went in, and they got 18 eggs from me. Which we were excited about because that was way more than we thought they were going to be able to retrieve.
And just a quick side note, leading up to the egg retrieval, they had done a saline sonogram on both of us. That's one of the things that they needed to do. And hers went super simple, easy peasy. For me, it was the PA that was doing the saline sonogram, and she had a really hard time introducing the catheter through my
But at the
cervix.
time, they were just like, I mean, it was a little bit more difficult. It shouldn't be a problem. It's kind of how they felt at that time.
They eventually got it in. They weren't able to insert as much saline as they wanted to, but they said we got enough of a good image. But yeah, it should be fine during the
and that was
the
kind of
egg
where they
retrieval.
left it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an important step that we had to do beforehand.
Yeah.
So yeah, egg retrievals went fine. I mean, it's a procedure where you're sedated, so we were both a little groggy afterwards.
I was
She was very groggy. It takes a lot of sedation for me, and even still, I'm like very
She acts like she's awake.
with it.
Yeah. Like I remember watching her after the procedure, they had opened the door to wheel her back into the recovery room, and I had
moved
already fully recovered.
myself over.
Yeah, I'm watching her, and she's like, I can move, and she's talking like she's awake and alert and oriented, and she just popped herself on over to the stretcher that they moved her into the recovery room, and I'm like, how is she already awake? They were like, I don't know, and come to find out, she didn't remember any of it. She was not awake in here, but
No, but I've been like that with sedation for other things that I've had done.
Yeah.
Where they're like, you seem like you were like
Totally
awake
with it.
and with it during all of that. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. But I guess it's just my response. I don't know.
you did well overall.
But yeah, egg retrieval went fine. It was easy. 13, 18. And so then
And the wait between when you do your egg retrieval and when you get
The
final
results.
results of how many of them are viable.
Well, how many embryos? So
Embryos,
they
yeah.
take those eggs, they fertilize them, or they attempt to fertilize
Yeah.
them with our chosen sperm, and then they have to let the embryos grow over, depends on your clinic. Ours was 5 to 6 days.
Boy, that feels like.
And a lot of clinics like keep their patients updated throughout those 5 to 6 days. Our clinic was more on the side of let us handle things.
We want to give you a final
We'll give you the
answer.
final number because a lot can change in those days. So they don't want to give you false hope or give you these bad numbers and then it ends up being okay. So they just chose to give us the final results.
Which I respect, I understand.
Yeah, and honestly, it worked out
Yeah.
better that way. I had 7 embryos make it, and Whitney had 3, which was actually not as bad as we were thinking for Whitney. But he did let us know that the 3 that made it were not great quality because they do grade the embryos based on like how many cells and things like that. But they'll
Whatever
grade
it is,
them
yeah.
on how well they think they would, implant and things like that. So my 7 were all pretty high grade aside from like 2 maybe or something. Her 3 were all pretty poor quality. So knowing that, we were also happy we chose genetic testing because had we not, those 3 embryos of hers, it would have been a high chance they would have ended in a miscarriage had we not even tested them, just because we already knew they were poor quality. But we'd already chosen to do genetic testing, so they send off all the embryos or like certain biopsies of the embryos. And that takes 2 weeks to get back.
Yeah, another
Long 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I had 4 that were all genetically healthy.
And then there's what is it?
And I had 2 mosaic embryos.
Mosaic, yeah.
Which means that like some of the cells came back abnormal, but they don't, like there was no specific abnormality, they just weren't 100% like normal cells. So those we kind of like have on the back burner, like worst case scenario. But I had 4 that were like completely perfect embryos.
Okay, yeah.
And then I'll let you share your results.
Well, essentially, mine were a no-go.
Yeah.
One of them was Klinefelter's syndrome.
No, that was mine.
Oh, that was yours?
One of mine had Klinefelter
What was mine
syndrome.
then?
She had trisomy 13. One of yours was trisomy 13. And then the other 2 were completely incompatible. with life.
Incompatible, yeah. Absolutely.
And the trisomy, I think it was 13 or 16. I don't know.
It,
That one he said, like, technically you could try to implant it, but it would almost certainly end in an early miscarriage. And so he was very adamant that
he highly recommended
Yeah.
that we did not go forward with
Yeah.
that.
And I do appreciate our doctor because he called us like on his vacation to go over these results with Whitney, just because obviously we had higher hopes that at least one of hers would make it. So that made the blow maybe a little easier.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. He is a great doctor. We're using him again for future IVF go-arounds. But I think, him calling personally on his vacation really meant a lot. It was really hard to hear just because I think that was my really only shot at having a genetically linked child to myself.
Because, like a lot of people ask, well, couldn't you just do that again, egg retrieval again,
Sure.
and try to get more?
We could.
But it's like another, $15,000 or more.
And let's
to
just
go
say
through it again.
Let's just say we had the money, just laying around. Who's to say that it wouldn't
Result
continue?
the same way. The doctor had said that the likelihood of, if we did it again, if we went through egg retrieval again, it would still most likely end in no genetically healthy embryos.
Yes.
Given her age, given the poor quality
history.
of those, and her low AMH, she was like, I mean, we can certainly do it if you want to, but I just want you to be prepared of what the result will probably be.
Right. And us being very grateful that we have 4 very healthy embryos from Alex. That's a blessing. So we were not going to continue to try with me and getting eggs from me. And so we decided to move forward with her.
Yeah, because we also only want, like, two-ish,
kids, yeah.
maybe 2 kids, really.
Yeah.
So we knew that 4 embryos was probably, hopefully, enough to where we wouldn't need any more.
Right.
Like now, if we wanted like 6 kids, then maybe we would have considered going forward with egg retrieval again.
But I think our ultimate goal is just to be moms. So, we still have that ability, and I'm not going to be selfish to say, no, I want a child with my genetics. I just want to be a mom. I don't care that it's coming from her genetics, because I love her and I think she's absolutely wonderful and beautiful. So why would I negate having a child or children from her genetics? So
Yeah.
that's where our mindset was at that point. Was it a blow? Yes, but we easily moved on from that.
I think my results made the blow a lot easier to deal with.
Absolutely.
So then we decided to move forward with the transfer, the actual embryo transfer, which would make one of us become pregnant.
Yes.
And we were going to have Whitney be the carrier. She was going to be carrying one of my embryos, obviously, because we only had mine. And that was the plan from the beginning. And so then moving forward with the transfer, you have to do a little bit more testing. But since we knew that where they had trouble, threading the catheter in her cervix from that previous test, we knew that she needed to have like a mock transfer leading up, which is where they try to use the transfer catheter to make sure that there won't be any issues with it. And then that's where things kind of took another turn. You can share that part.
Yeah. So you have to go through the cervix, which, it's not very pleasant. And so I think I went by myself that day. We couldn't both take off work. So the mock transfer, I show up. The doctor, I think, is, cautiously optimistic that this is going to go smoothly. But he was proven wrong.
Yeah, spoiler, it did not go smoothly.
It did not go smoothly. He was unable to get the catheter in smoothly, because during a transfer it needs to be as smooth as butter, because if there's any turbulence, any issue at all, there is a high risk of, like, if the catheter is pulled out at the end and there's blood at the end of the catheter, whatever it may be,
that the embryo won't
be
take.
damaged or it won't take. Yeah.
And for a transfer, they use like a specific size catheter, a specific like structured catheter. And so that's the one they were trying to use originally. And then that one they could not get into her cervix.
And so then he tried to use a stiffer catheter. And here this is a transfer supposed to take
10 minutes.
Max.
Yeah.
And this mock transfer, he was trying for maybe 35 minutes. And, really it didn't go smoothly at all.
And he said the reason that he couldn't get it in, because this is important because she has to do another procedure after this. He said that one, her cervix was like crooked, so like it wasn't a straight shot, so it was hard to get it to bend. But then 2, it was narrow, so it wasn't as wide as it needed to be either. So it's kind of like
Don't know why.
Yeah, double whammy.
My mom calls it, I have pyronies of my cervix.
No one's gonna know what that is.
Some people might look it up, Google it. Anyways, so after all of that, when I had gotten dressed and he kind of went over everything with me and his plan, he had said, all right, there's 2 things that I would like to do. One of them, and I don't remember the order of it, maybe you can correct me, but he said, let's try a dilation. So which means that, we gradually, in this same procedure, same day, I'd have to schedule it on a different day because I'd gone through a lot that day, but he was like, leading up to it, let's dilate your cervix so we make the catheter bigger and bigger and bigger.
Essentially just widen the cervix.
Yes.
And I have a picture of the tools, and I'll include that because it looks like medieval devices.
Yes. So
she went through that, and that was, you took it like a champ, and
yeah, it was not awful. It was not as bad as my brain was gonna.
No, but I mean, it's not pleasant.
No,
she's
it's not
awake
pleasant.
for this, so
Yeah.
it's not like she's asleep by any means.
And he also said this is a procedure that most people are sedated for, and I said I can't be sedated. I've got to work. We're taking too much time off.
Side
of work.
note: we had just started work as nurse practitioners.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a job that we had been at or anything. Like we had literally just started.
We weren't established yet to be able to take time off.
So we're doing all this like on our lunch breaks and sometimes like right after work, but usually on our lunch breaks. So we couldn't do anything sedated because we had to go back and work.
Yeah, and he was like,
couldn't
I
take
respect
pain
that.
medication, couldn't take any sedating like Xanax, Valium, nothing like that.
No. And so he said, well, normally this is a sedated procedure, but if you're willing to do it and you're willing to sit still, like we can do it. And I said, I can do this. Let's just do this. And so he did it. Anyways, so long story short, next procedure that he wanted to do was to kind of create.
Well, so he thought maybe it had helped. They successfully widened it some, the cervix enough, but her cervix was still crooked. So they had to fix the crooked part now. So
Yes.
they fixed the narrow part, now they have to fix the crooked part.
And that entailed putting a stitch on either side of my cervix inside and creating a loop so that when we do the transfer, he can pull on the
To straighten it out, so it'll like straighten it whenever he's pulling like down here. So
Yeah.
it'll pull it and straighten it.
He wasn't pulling it out like that, but he had stuff.
Well,
But he was going to pull it and straighten it and then take the stitches out and then be done with it.
And that didn't work.
No, because the day of the transfer, the stitch
Broke.
broke and
He
came.
literally pulled on it and it just like, the stitch broke, and then he tried to have to do the transfer with just her crooked cervix.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to do at this point. We've already thawed the embryo.
Mm-hmm.
So you run the risk of, if you rethaw the embryo, the likelihood of it being like a healthy embryo that's going to take after that is
just
pretty,
goes down.
lower.
Yeah.
And so we were like, you know what, it's already thawed, we're already here, Whitney's already prepped, we're already on the table.
Let's just
try it.
Hope that it goes
Give
well.
it a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and it was not a smooth procedure. Shocker.
It took like 45 minutes to an hour, and this is just him trying to get the catheter in. That's not even like
Transferring.
releasing the embryo and waiting and all that. This is literally just trying to get the catheter in there.
Yeah,
So we knew, like,
this wasn't going to take.
we're
very
very
realistic
little
people.
hope,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're like, if this takes, this is
True
literally.
miracle.
Yeah.
Didn't take.
No.
Which was a bummer. I think more so because, and I'll let you share your thoughts, but because now we know she can't have a genetically linked embryo or baby to her, which we'd already come to terms with. It was fine. But then now she also can't carry a child either.
Which I think that was probably the final big blow for me, because we always had that next, thing to look forward to, which was me carrying a baby. But I think that was maybe the bigger blow, I would say, for me, just because it was the final blow.
And you have your like expectations and what you envision, and we'd always talked about what you being pregnant, and like she would be the first one to have the baby, and she'd be carrying my embryo, so we'd both be a part of the pregnancy.
Right.
So it was a lot of adjusting our expectations.
Yes.
So then,
And then the doctor, he spoke to me personally again, and he gave us the option of trying again with me, and he, learned from the first transfer, and being, again, very realistic people, we said, nope,
because at this point we've only got now 3 embryos. We know we want at least 2 kids, so that only leaves a little room for error.
Yeah.
So we were like, no, we're
Nope.
switching gears. I'll be the one to get pregnant.
Right.
Assuming everything, checks out with me.
Right.
Everything did. Mock transfer, super easy. Everything was perfect on my end. No issues with my cervix, no issues with labs, nothing like that.
No.
And we did my transfer.
It was max 10 minutes long,
Yeah.
smooth as butter.
Lunch break.
Yep.
But I did the transfer, went back to work.
It's transfer day.
I had a lot of, people always ask my first signs, a lot of back pain and cramping right after. I literally thought he had poked a hole through my uterus because it was so crampy.
And then quickly after that, some exhaustion, like
Couldn't get off the couch, type of exhaustion.
never seen her more exhausted than that.
And then I was pregnant.
Yeah, and it was an awesome, that negated everything. It just totally eliminated all the other poor feelings that, we had experienced with my stuff. I just totally forgot about all of that, and
Yeah. And I'll show you the video of us finding out that I was pregnant. We tested it at home beforehand, 5 days after the transfer.
we couldn't wait.
Yeah, technically you're supposed to wait the 2 weeks for your clinic to test you because like the hormones that you're on can alter things.
Yeah.
We did not take that advice and we tested at home.
And I'm glad we did. It was
100%.
It was a memory that I'll always remember. So
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So then after that, pregnancy and all that, and birth can be another video.
Yeah.
But that was our long fertility journey towards our son, and then now we're about to embark on our second baby.
But all the other stressors with me will be eliminated, so hopefully it'll be just as smooth.
And we've already been through it once, obviously, with me, and thinking hopefully it'll go okay, but we'll see. That'll be later this year. And we'll take you all along maybe a little bit closer with that one.
Yes. Fingers crossed it goes well.
But yeah.